Hey GENNOW, thanks for joining us this week. Here is Kristen with our message number 3 on the you effect.
So we've been talking about this idea of influence, right? Well, this week I want to start out with something super encouraging. Here it is. We all mess up. I know, super uplifting, right? But that's the thing. We all make mistakes. We all drift away from what we know to be right. And what's the result when we do this? We lose our influence. Sometimes this happens in a really big way, right? We make a huge mistake, everybody hears about it, it becomes the headlining gossip at our school, and then our reputation goes downhill. But sometimes it happens in a smaller way. It wasn't one huge, big mistake that everybody knew about, but it was a series of small decisions, small changes that we made to our friend group or our environment, until all of a sudden it feels like everything has shifted. Our morals and our standards are different. When I was your age, I was afraid to do anything wrong. I made sure that I made all the right decisions all the time. But one summer, my friend group completely changed. I was working this job where I was working until 10 p.m. every night, and then I would go hang out with my friends till like 3 in the morning. And guys, if you've ever heard your parents tell you that nothing good ever happens after midnight, they're right. Listen to them. So I'd hang out with these new friends every night, and for the first time, I started to look at myself in the mirror and not recognize the person that I saw looking back at me. My standards had lowered, my definition of right and wrong completely changed, and I abandoned all my old friends. When I first joined this new group of friends, I remember I convinced myself and my parents that I joined the group so that I could influence them for the better. But it didn't take long until I completely lost my influence. Guys, this kind of thing happens to all of us. And often it doesn't just result in us losing our influence, but also losing our friends and other relationships. And I think for a lot of us, the response that we have is, well, that's it, the story's over. And we start to give up. We give up on church and our friends and the things that we know are good for us. Maybe you can relate to this. Or maybe you don't feel like you've lost your influence through a mistake, but maybe you don't feel like you have influence because you don't speak up for what's right. Maybe you haven't made an effort to have influence in the first place. Either way, you're not alone. The Bible has plenty of stories of people in both of these camps. So we're going to look at one of those stories today. The story you're about to hear is about a woman who had made a lot of really big mistakes. The people in her community called her a sinner, which meant she wasn't a follower of Jesus. And it's also important to know for the context of the story that women had very little value or influence during this time period. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him, so Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. For clarity, the Pharisees were Jewish leaders in Jesus' day who cared way more about following all the right rules than loving the people around them. And they looked down on anyone who disagreed with them or anyone who had culturally little value or influence, kind of like the woman I told you about. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet weeping. Her tears fell on his feet and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. This might sound kind of weird, but you have to understand that washing people's feet was a really common thing to do back then. It was polite to wash your own feet before entering someone else's house, and it was a sign of honor to wash someone else's feet for them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman he is touching. She is a sinner. But the Pharisees had it all wrong. Jesus wanted to be around this woman who had little influence. Jesus was drawn to the people who were nobodies, like the little boy in the story we talked about 2 weeks ago who fed 5,000 people with his lunch. Or Peter, who we talked about last week, who had made some huge mistakes, but ended up leading 3,000 people to Jesus in one day. And the woman wasn't unaware of the environment. She knew she wasn't respected or even welcome, but she was drawn to Jesus because she saw that he was different than the Pharisees. So let's see how Jesus responds to the Pharisees. Then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to 2 people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces to the other. But neither of them could repay him, so he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled a larger debt. That's right, Jesus said. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, Look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven, so she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. Then Jesus said to the woman, Your sins are forgiven. The men at the table said among themselves, Who is this man that he goes around forgiving sins? And Jesus said to the woman, Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. See, up until this point, the woman's life was simple. She was a sinner, and so people looked down on her. But Jesus' response to the woman was totally different. Jesus loved her, and so he forgave her and gave her a new start at life. See, the woman's story has been used as an example of faith for thousands of years. She once had no you effect. It was non-existent, but Jesus restored her influence. And he wants to do the same thing for you. Because of Jesus, we can change the effect we have on others. He wants to forgive us because he loves us that much. He wants you to experience a new start through his forgiveness and love for you. And remember, Jesus didn't forgive the woman just because she washed his feet and did something good. Jesus forgave her because he loved her, and she had faith in who he said he was. Jesus forgives you because he loves you. So you can't earn forgiveness. Jesus gives it to us as a free gift. But maybe you know you've been forgiven, but you're still trying to regain your influence among the people around you, maybe your friends or your family. Here are 3 steps for doing that. Step 1, remember. Remember that Jesus can use anybody. It doesn't matter what you've done or what mistakes you've made. He wants to use you to influence the people around you. Number 2, reconcile. Maybe there are decisions or mistakes that you've made that have hurt other people in your life. Let them know that you want to restore your relationship with them. And number 3, identify a specific step. What's one way that you can move forward and change your influence? Maybe it's apologizing. Maybe it's trying to stop gossiping. Try to find one thing that you can do in order to change the influence that you have on the people around you. After that summer of getting caught up in the wrong crowd like I told you about, I realized that I messed up. I ended up apologizing to the friends that I had abandoned, and I even apologized to one of the new friends in the new group. He realized that he had messed up too, and we were both able to change the way that we were living and regain our influence. This only happened because with Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on others. Lost or non-existent influence doesn't have to stay lost forever.
Thanks so much for joining us, you guys. We hope that you have a great week, and we hope to see you soon.